So now it wound it up, and now every time I take a picture, a new piece of film.
Good morning, everyone.
Move.
Hello. You guys hear me okay?
Okay.
Welcome
I'll
to
take
another
that.
live stream. This time I I made some upgrades. You can actually see me, but my webcam is terrible,
Here, we can put
and
that
it doesn't
back on.
matter what type of lighting I try, I can't get it to work right. So today we're going to look at another portrait session. Let me just make sure everything's running right. Everything looks good so far. How's everyone doing today? Looks like my logo's blocking.
I liked both, so maybe we'll do both.
There we
Why don't
go.
you go to the last spot you were in? The last spot you were in, yeah.
Looks like we have 9 viewers. That's not bad for me. All right,
get one
so
like
today
that.
we're going to take a look at
That looks
another
perfect.
portrait session. If someone's listening,
I'll
please
get-
let me know that my audio levels are doing okay and everything. I'm still figuring out OBS. It's a little bit of a learning curve, mostly because I haven't had time to actually, sit in front of the computer and figure it out. I'm kind of figuring it out as I go. Today we're going to take a look at 2 of my favorite people, Miles and Macy. This is a couple of twins, or a set of twins, that I've been photographing since, if Maple's watching, I invited her to watch. Good morning, Linda. Good morning, Maple. Good morning, Casa. You'll go shopping later, I guess. I don't know. So yeah, I've been photographing them, and Maple is the mother of these 2, and she can maybe tell you guys how long I've been photographing them. I believe I've been photographing them since they were 2, right? And now I think they're almost 8. So we're going to look at these portraits. We're going to talk about kind of what I'm looking for, what my objective is, and how I just approach the overall session. You guys can see some POV footage in the bottom. A lot of it, some of it is on my camera, and a lot of it is Miles running around with my camera. Makes me proud, future photographer maybe, although I think he's too smart. Let's start with the photos. Yep, 2.5 years. Yeah, it's wild. And how old are they now? There is a delay, and I haven't figured out if I can kind of fix that, but there is a delay, so usually I'm seeing the text after I've already said what I said, that kind of thing. Okay, so this session was shot at Walt Disney Hall. A lot of people that are new to portrait photography and event photography will ask, did you need a permit? And you probably technically do. It's the kind of thing nobody's really saying anything if you do. It's like shooting in Santa Monica. Technically you need a permit, but most people aren't really asking for one. Anytime I've ever been asked for a permit, I just play dumb. Or I say, oh yeah, I'm their uncle, or, we're just playing around today, taking a few photos. Oh no, I'm not a professional. That kind of thing. 8, wow, that's crazy. So you guys know what I'm about. I'm about capturing just authentic moments. I'm not into overly posed portraits. I don't think you need to overly pose people. I think people are uncomfortable when you pose them. And so I, as a rule, try to avoid it. I give prompts. I place my subjects in good lighting where I know I can make interesting compositions, and then I let them interact. When you have more than one person, a couple, or in this case twins, it's easier because you can have them interact off of each other, and you definitely don't need to tell people how to interact. If they're a couple, you don't need to say, hey, I need you to hold her hand this way, or put your hand there, or whatever. You just say, hold hands, or I'd love to see a shot of you guys just embracing each other. And let them do it naturally, and you'll get interesting shots. In the case of twins, it's like they have their own language. I mean, they do their own thing, right? These 2 are in tune. You don't really need to tell them how to interact. So let's take a look through some of the images. Usually, initially, what I will do is I do my bread and butter basic shots first. And then as I warm up and I start to feel more creative And the longer I go, the client also tends to feel more comfortable. I don't know, maybe Maple, you can tell me if there's a warm-up period with the twins. I think there is. With Macy, there was a warm-up period of like 3 years. Miles just loved me right away. Macy was a little bit shy in her shell, but eventually she came out of it. Like, it was weird. One year, it might have been this year. It was like a different person, and she was so excited and not grumpy. Here's Miles holding my Pentax 6.7. So you guys know I love shooting film. I don't do it for anyone but myself, really, because I just love the process. But that said, film photos do have a different quality to it that I really like. And when it comes to medium format, I actually do think it's superior in a lot of ways to my 35mm film camera. I also, in addition to shooting with the Pentax 6.7, I shot with this guy here. This is my Canon 1V. It's basically the best film camera Canon ever made. It is their flagship camera. It's like getting the 1DX Mark III today, but now I'm blanking, but I think it was 2001 this came out. A year later, they came out with a flagship digital camera. So this was like the pinnacle of design when it came to film photography. Its autofocus is incredible. I shot with that, and I shot with the Pentax. Just want to make sure everyone hears me okay, so I'm going to check in the comments. Yeah, they are adorable, Linda. These two are really cute. Miles, every year I think it's going to be the year he doesn't ask to hold my hand when we walk from location to location, but every year he still asks. I love the guy. Here's some really cute headshot style portrait of Macy. One thing you guys can do, if you watched my professional portrait video, I talk about some basic posing. Now I'm not talking about posing, right? But when you are going to shoot like a headshot, there are some go-tos to use, and there are some tricks of the trade. For example, you guys know often you need to have someone bring their chin down. In this case, I'm shooting from above Macy, and so I don't need to have her move her chin down to do sort of like a classic portrait. The idea is that you're shifting the eye line toward the camera more. So when I bring my eye line down, I'm bringing my eyes closer to you. That's the general idea. There's more to it. So more portraits. You don't need anything fancy. You just need to find, again, good light, good spot, and capture beautiful portraits. I mean, you don't need to try to be super creative. Like, your creativity isn't like going off the beaten path necessarily. Sometimes being creative is simply having restraint and not going all wild with your portraits. I don't think people need photos of their children that are like super high art. You know, they want well lit moments. More important than anything is capturing some real moments and showing some joy, some like life in their children or whoever you're photographing. You guys know one of my easiest techniques I use for getting people to give me big reactions is having them look at each other. It works on everyone. Like, good friends find it awkward. Couples even like think it's funny. Twins, look what happens. But they go off into their own tangents. Yeah. I don't think I asked them to hug here. I think they just did it. So in this situation, my job is not to control the situation, it's to document it. It's to just make sure we have a situation conducive for people feeling very relaxed and enjoying themselves so that you can document good moments. Let's take a look at comments. All good, but the store closes soon. No problem. I'll see you soon. Welcome, Stefan. Stefan, right? I'm guessing Stefan, not Steven. I don't know. My favorite photographs are the spontaneous impromptu shots. So this is something I've always known. Sometimes people don't know. Maple smart, she knows. But like sometimes clients don't know that's what they want. And it's what I've always done. I've always provided the impromptu, candid moments. A lot of clients don't ask for it. Many do because they know who they're hiring, right? They've looked at my work or they've talked to me. They know that's what I'm about. But when I was first starting out, I had a lot of clients that just wanted like me to come as an event photographer and just photograph groups of people together posing. And then I just kill it with the candids and they're like, oh, you know? So it's definitely always been what I've been about. So I do start pretty simple, and then as the day progresses, I get a little more creative. I try different things. Good, I'm glad I pronounced it right. Also, it looks like my delay isn't as bad as usual. So the original plan for this session was actually to meet at Union Station. I always show up early because I like to just have that peace of mind. It's not so much about scouting as it is just wanting to get there on time and not feel stressed out. I've talked about how for me when I'm shooting, I'm completely relaxed. I'm familiar with the job, but I get anxiety about just getting there on time. I live in Los Angeles. There's traffic. So when I got to Union Station early, I looked for parking for I think 30 minutes and I couldn't find any. I forgot what was going on, but something was going on. There was also a nude bike ride that was passing through. It was really weird. Like, I'm looking and I'm like, you know when you're like not responding, you're just like, what am I looking at? Because I see like 50 people riding bicycles completely nude. And then I hear this voice saying, it's legal. And I look up and pretty much parked. It was a standstill, the traffic. Right next to me was a cop. And she's like, it's legal. Yeah, there's nothing we can do. I'm like, okay. I didn't even ask. And she's like, well, someone needs to file a complaint if they're like offended. And, are you offended? I'm like, nah. She's like, all right. It was pretty funny. It was very surreal. This is one of my favorites. I am pronouncing your name right? Nadine, it is Nadine. So one way you can create a more dynamic portrait or headshot is cutting those angles. You guys can see I'm not shooting head on in this case. What I'm doing is I'm creating an angle. I'm shooting from above so that Miles' eye line is in line with me. It's closer to me. I don't need to have him bring his chin down. If I were shooting at his level, I probably would. I like to mix up interactive shots as with the kind of standard headshots. This way your client can frame one image of, if they want like a headshot on their desk of each child or whatever, and then they can have some group photos or pairs. Let's see what Maple has to say. The nude bike ride, I forgot about that. It was pretty funny. So anyway, there was no parking at Union Station. I looked for like literally 30 minutes. So we used a backup plan to go to the Disney Hall. And then we ended up shooting there for a while and we circled back to Union Station eventually. Let me know if I'm going too slow through the images or too fast. So Walt Disney Hall is an interesting location because you can find some even light, but you also have light that's a little bit reminiscent of maybe like an unfiltered beauty dish or something. You get very crisp light because it's very reflective. If you're not familiar with the Walt Disney Hall, it's likely you are, but I would do a quick Google. Also, before I forget, you guys can always check out my work. I find it to be incredibly important. I believe it's incredibly important for you guys to know who you're listening to if you're new to the channel, what my perspective is, so you get an idea. You're always welcome to check out my work, and also it probably helps me out with my ranking, I'm not gonna lie. So back to the work. As always, if you guys have any questions, just put it in the comments or the chat box and I will address it. One thing I look forward to with an upgrade to my camera I've talked about for a while is that I don't like even though the 5D Mark III, its focus points aren't as cluttered as cameras were in the past. Cameras have less cluttered focus points now. You can pretty much focus anywhere, and that will give me some freedom because I don't want to focus recompose so drastically. And what happens is with all your focus points toward the center, it's too much of a recomposition for me to want to put up with. And I'm an obsessive focuser. The way I shoot, and since I actually have a camera and a webcam with me today, the way I shoot is I'd have to actually, give me one sec, I'll grab my 5D Mark III. I wanted to grab my 5D Mark III because the Canon 1V doesn't have a focus controller in the back. You're using it, there's like an old school way of changing your focus point where you have to press that button, and it still works in modern cameras. Like I think the Canon R, you can still do it, but you press that back button here next to the back button focus, you press that, and then you can move your focus points horizontally with the shutter button and vertically with the aperture wheel. So when I'm shooting with the Canon 5D Mark III, I'm pretty much always constantly repositioning the micro focus point. So I bring it down to the tiniest point, and I'm always putting it on the eye of my main subject. And so I'm constantly doing that and then just pivoting to the back button focus and refocusing. That way I'm always adjusting. I'm not shooting servo typically, and then whenever I'm ready I can hit the shutter. So that's how I like to shoot. Now I need to find a spot for this camera. All right, let's keep going. So you can, at this location, you have some really dynamic light, which makes for interesting portraits. And we'll keep going. What you guys are going to see is that I decided to try different things. I'm still playing around. You can't ever stop playing around. And I also like to challenge widely held conventions about oh, you always have to shoot in even light. It's really important you know how to find the even light and how to do the safe stuff and find the most flattering light. That is true. But there's nothing wrong with exploring and trying different things. And one thing I tried is shooting with harsher light than I normally would. So, for example, these shots, you guys can even see there's a different quality to it. And I shot in light that was a little harsher because we have this reflective surface on the Walt Disney Hall that was actually blasting off pretty direct light. It was pretty direct. It wasn't super harsh. If we look in the shadows here, and by the way, guys, I don't think you're going to be able to see my cursor. I figured out why, and I can't fix it right now. But if you look at the shadows in this portrait, they're pretty harsh. And that's not normally what I would shoot in, but I wanted to experiment and try. Luckily, in this situation, we have kids that have perfect skin. We're not dealing with an older person that might not, and so I can get away with it a little bit more. But I actually really liked how these turned out. Hey, I'm on. Yeah, back button focus is the only way I can shoot. I did have the XT3 for a while, and I found that it wasn't bad, actually, to to not use back button focus. It was very clunky to set it up, and so I kind of didn't bother. I just embraced the camera. That's what I tend to do. I always embrace a camera's quirks. I enjoy that process. I enjoy just trying a new tool. I'm not a gearhead, and I'm not very material. You guys know I don't really upgrade my cameras like every time a new camera comes out. I don't think that's going to change the quality of my work significantly, but when I do upgrade, because I've made my camera work for so long, I find that it can be a game changer, especially if you're if you're going every other generation. So for example, I went from the Canon 5D Classic to the Mark III. It was a game changer. If I went from the Classic to the 5D Mark II, unless we're talking about video, I don't think that would have been a game changer. And because I stuck with the Canon 5D Classic for so long, it made me a better photographer because I had to work around its weaknesses. So let's keep going. If you guys have any questions, as always, let me know. And Maple, by the way, I'm going to send you the video that's playing in the corner in its entirety. So the kids can also have that. And I still have video we recorded in Venice. I'm going to get to that. That's, I think, a lot better footage. I'm really excited about that. So when you guys know I'm an event photographer, I've really moved into specializing in that. But that said, I have my long-term clients I've been photographing for many years, and I continue to do so. And so while you're not going to find family portraits on my website anymore, I still shoot them for a few people. This is one of them. And yeah, you grow close to your clients that you work with for so long. I have two families that call me Uncle Mick, neither of which I look anything like. I love when these two start looking at each other. There's this whole like game going on that I love. Here's one of my favorite images. So again, I'm looking for a nice even light. I found it. And then I'm looking for a more, ideally a dynamic background. And here I have one. It's pretty industrial, but I really liked how those turned out. One prompt I'll give. I don't remember if I gave them one in this situation. But basically, you can have them hug really tight. Like I did a grad session also recently-ish. And, you know, if you have like a group of girls, you can say, all right, now come in really tight, and you just encourage them to get really close, really tight, do like a big group hug, and you can get some really interesting portraits. You can get wide shots where everyone's interacting and and they'll all have big expressions, or you can even shoot candids, zoom in tight for each person. Hey Miles, how are you? Yes. I do use that camera mug pretty often. Hang on, I'm gonna grab it. Every year I get a gift too. I think this year it was this camera mug, this lens mug, which I use quite often. It fits into my car cup holder. And I got a bunch of lemons, which I didn't realize why at first, but on our last portrait session we found a lemon tree, and I was obsessed with how good these fresh lemons smelled, and they remembered. Where's, let me know where Macy is. Where is she? So here I'm experimenting with different tones. I noticed we have a really warm light that's bouncing off the far wall, but Miles in this situation is in pretty cool, even light. So sometimes you can't. Sometimes I'm taking a pause to actually document whatever's happening, and I'm really in not controlling the situation at all. So, for example, here I just saw a moment, and so would I have put her in this light? No, but we have a cool moment that I wanted to capture. Again, here I'm experimenting with different light. I'm trying to really rethink about how I shoot, what I'm willing to shoot, what kind of lighting conditions I'm willing to shoot in, and I wanted to try this. I liked the background. The light was harsher than I would have normally liked, but I didn't think it would be so terrible that it wasn't worthwhile. Like, I think we get trapped in these ideas about how a portrait should be shot. For example, it should always be shot in perfectly soft and even light. And I want to challenge all my ideas. I always do. I don't know why this image is turned upside down. Let's skip. Here's a few of my favorites. I placed them in a tree. And what we're doing here is so my light's actually coming from behind them. And then to my back, there's a reflective silver wall, basically, that's bouncing a lot of soft light into the frame. And so basically, I'm using the sun as a rim light and also its reflection as my key light. And so I'm able to create more interesting dynamic portraits. I'm able to make them pop a little bit more by creating sort of a separation light. You can see it in Macy's hair and on the top of Miles' head here. Yeah, I think of the whole session, this set is my favorite. I also shot a lot of film here. So here we go. We can see how we create a nice rim light, a nice golden rim light. In a perfect world, maybe I wouldn't have it speckled on a shirt, but I'm all about just natural. I don't think we need these perfect portraits that look unrealistic, where we if we want something so perfect, we might as well just draw it, right? Might as well render it in a computer. That's what I think. Another thing, when you can backlight a subject and the light is going through the trees, you can get a really interesting pattern, a bokeh pattern in the background, if that's what you want to call it. If anyone's interested in specs, I'm shooting with an 85mm at f3.2, so I'm not even shooting fully wide open. A lot of having that enhanced background blur that you might want will have to do with relative distance. So I'm pretty close to Macy here, and relative to my lens, they're really far away. If I were shooting her in front of a background like 5 feet away from her, but then she's 20 feet away, and then the background's 25 feet away, we're not going to get that same effect. I hope that makes sense. One thing I've also identified in my own work is that for many years, I had the habit of overexposing a little bit. And I think that was a hangover from my film shooting days, where shooting to the right or overexposing a bit was really beneficial. Ideally, a perfect exposure is better than, anything, but over is better than under. And when you do it with digital and bring it down, I feel like the colors aren't quite there. Getting a proper exposure really gives this vibrancy. I don't know if that's a word, but they make more vibrant images in my experience. So here I'm not afraid to shoot through things a bit. You can see a bit of the tree in the bottom right corner. I'm always tinkering. I'm always seeing where I can get the best exposure or the best like here, I saw I could get a really beautiful background. The spot of light on his head isn't ideal, but if I were to place money on it, I wouldn't think like, and Maple is actually joining us, it's not an issue. It might be a technical issue if you want to be a perfectionist, but it's not the kind of issue your average person cares about. We have to remember photography is not about technical chops. It's about creating meaningful images. And that's something that really gets lost on a lot of people, I think. I know it's stereotyping, but I think like gearheads, people that care about gear more than anything, tend to not really get what the essence of photography is about, unfortunately. Like someone who loves creating images is not going to endlessly debate people in the comment section of a video about which brand is better, for example. Or like the idea of constantly switching gear. I don't think working professionals are doing that, guys. Nobody's dumping $10,000 of gear to change brands. I mean, some people, I'm sure, but that's overhyped. I think a lot of people talking about switching is because they don't really own anything. You know, if you own like maybe as much as 20 grand worth of gear, you're not going to be switching. Like, I don't want to switch, but even if I wanted to, I wouldn't want to deal with that. I'd be like, nah, forget it. So here, more natural moments that I just saw. I think we were taking a break. One thing that is helpful with kids is to take breaks. Don't make them feel rushed. Here's our family portrait. So when I'm shooting wide, you guys can see, like especially in this first shot, where I'm not able to control the window of light. So what happens is light from like especially that bottom right corner is entering my frame and it's kind of fogging the image up. So compare that to say this image where I'm able to tightly control my window of my field of view. That light isn't entering the lens in the same way and I'm creating a more vibrant image. The image on the left, you can see it's washed out a little bit, but let's deselect. I identified it and I started shooting a little bit tighter in order to kind of close that window off. So how many of you guys have been following my live streams, or let me know if it's your first one. I'm curious to know. Also, please remember, like it if you're enjoying this content. I guess it will help the YouTube algorithm out. Oh, this is a really cute portrait. So what I'm doing compositionally is I'm creating a V. If you guys look at the frame, it creates like a V, starting with Miles' hand in the on the top, and then I'm having them sort of mirror the shape of the tree. So we did make it back to Union Station, and we were using, again, I wanted to try different light. And so in here, in this situation, I'm pretty much using that kind of golden hour light. I think, though, it was actually bouncing off of a wall behind me, and basically that wall was also kind of warm toned, and so we get these really warm portraits. So Aman asks, how many are you delivering to your client from all of them? All of these. I'll tell you guys if I show you, if I'm like, I'm going to eventually do a few videos where I'm actually going to go through the whole process with you guys from the beginning to end of editing, where you'll see me upload the photos. You'll see how I cull them, how I edit them, and everything. What we're looking at is everything. I deliver them all. My pricing isn't built on like nickel and diming. You hire me and you get everything. You get all the files. I even will create an online gallery for social media sized files. I don't nickel and dime. I don't like choose the 10 best images. I don't even have a time limit, to be honest. I didn't make these decisions entirely based on, I mean, like maybe I considered it. It's kind of complicated. The way I basically do it is the way I'd want it to be done if I were hiring someone. Simple as that. I'm not necessarily making business decisions based off how I can extract more money from people. I'm making business decisions by having a good product and a good service. And I ask myself all the time, what would I want? Like, what would I want out of my photographer if I were to hire one? I wouldn't want to be nickel and dimed. I just would want all the images. I try to edit down. Sometimes you guys see a lot of images that are similar. I try to avoid that, but I've always said it's a combination of, you don't want to put the burden of narrowing down the selection on the client, but you also don't want to not offer your client every good shot. Also, I'm balancing that with the amount of time it takes me to edit. So it's a combination of many things. It can make it more, Aman says it can make it more difficult. Yeah, I try like not to. What I'm usually looking for is if I can detect a genuine difference between two images, like a difference in that expression, I keep them. But like, for example, here, there's a difference between these two images, right? Like I'll compare them on the window. There is a difference, and so I kept them both. If you guys can't tell, his eyes are closed in this one. Come on, even if you don't like images, you still... Yeah, of course. Yeah, I do filter out bad images. Right. So Maple, who is actually the client in this situation, says she appreciates all of the images because then she has the chance to choose the one that looks best to us. Exactly. And I don't want to make that decision, but sometimes you have like 10 images that look very similar, especially if you're an overshooter. I try to be very frugal with how I shoot, and I'm not missing moments because of that. I'm only shooting when there is a moment. There are times I will do a burst for very specific reasons, but if I have like 5 shots that all look the same, I don't want to deliver all 5. If there's enough difference between the 5, let's say you have 5 images that are similar, but you can detect that there's a big enough difference, I do let the client decide. But also, it's kind of like going to Cheesecake Factory where they have 100 things on the menu. It can make it really hard. So I try to avoid that. I, of course, edit out blinking photos. I edit out anything like that, out of focus, unless I miss it. These I could have maybe... See, they're different. They're all different. This is a good example. Very subtle, though. Trying different light. This is the end of the session where now I'm like just experimenting with different light. We're having fun. We're just trying new things. So when I talk to a potential client on the phone, basically I let them know, because you need to kind of educate them on what you're offering. And I say, look, I don't have a time limit. I don't have an image limit. I shoot until I feel I've got it, until I have a good collection of images. And that's what I do. And so be it if it takes a bit longer, you know. You can be assertive and say, like, it's up to you. You have to make sure you feel like you have a good collection of images. Ideally, if you've been hired, they have faith in you as a photographer and they will trust you. Who are you focusing on in the group shots? Okay, good question. when I have a group of people, the person I'm going to focus on, I'm looking for that medium point. So this is going to be kind of hard to explain. Let's say the furthest forward person is here and the person farthest back is here. I'm going to try to find that medium focus point, and that's going to be where I focus. What I'm doing here is a bit tricky in this image. I'm shooting at f2.5 with a group of 4. That can only work if you're making sure they're all perfectly lined up and they're equal distance from you. Also, it depends on what kind of lens, what focal length you're at. You can't shoot if, like, let's say I had a magical f2.5 wide angle lens and I was a few feet from them, I couldn't do that. But it's a relative distance. They're all relatively equally distanced from me in this situation. So I can shoot at f2.5. Let's see, other questions. We're getting a few. Let me know if you have another one, Linda. Okay, answered that one. I think I've answered. Thank you. Amon says, definitely kids and family like you, enjoy the time with you. Yeah, I mean, I really look forward to it. Like, every time like once a year I get to see them, and I'm like really genuinely excited. Mabel could tell you, I doubt I seem rushed. I'm always like, yeah, we'll just keep shooting. And at some point I run out of light, or I'm like, well, okay, we definitely got it. But like every time I go home also in a good mood. Like, I really enjoy doing this. It's funny because I wanted to get away from family portraits years ago. But now when I do them, at least it might be the people I'm doing them for, I'm genuinely really happy and excited to be doing it. It's kind of like that with weddings now for me too. I genuinely get excited, or I genuinely enjoy it because I don't feel like that's my job anymore. I didn't like when it felt like that was what my job was. I wonder, let me know if that makes sense. I have more questions. Do you give a client the raw files if they ask? I don't really get asked. It's a common thing people talk about. I would educate them on why they don't need them, but it's up to them. Like for me, I think customer service is important. My ego's not so big where I'm like, I don't want these files. Well, okay. I have been tagged in the 10 plus 12 years now, actually, that I've been doing this. I've been tagged in images that were edited, and I didn't like that because they were edited poorly. Like, for example, the all black and white with like one thing in color look, not a fan. And I've been tagged and I wasn't happy about that, but it wasn't worth me saying, hey, can you not tag me? You know? As far as raw files go, if they want to do that, it won't matter if they want to go crazy on the editing. It won't matter if it's a raw or a JPEG. They're still going to destroy the file, like the image, if they don't know how to edit well. I have faith in my images that I don't feel like I need to overly edit them. I'm pretty much doing color, a little bit of white balance adjustments sometimes. Mostly contrast and sharpening is really the two main things. Let's see what other questions. But raw, let me make sure I answered that. Raw files. These days, you guys know me. If you've been watching my channel for a while. I love shooting. I don't like editing. If someone's like, hey, I just want the raw files at this point, I'm like, all right. You know, I guess it depends on what they're going to do with it. But if I have a shoot and scoot job, meaning you photograph the job and then you instantly update upload the files to a hard drive for them or whatever, I don't mind that, you know. I'd prefer to make sure I control the edit, but you know, if they're willing to do the edit for me, okay. I guess that's my take on it. I don't think there's a correct answer. Let's look at questions. Maple says, we love that he doesn't hold a time limit against us. It was a big deciding factor when looking for a family photographer, especially when they were babies. Yeah, Like, imagine giving a client 30 minutes with babies or kids that aren't cooperating. And I do, even though I'm telling you guys, like, I don't worry about my images. I don't feel like I have to control the editing if someone wants to edit on their own. But I do care about the product. Like, I care about this. And so for me, I'm also doing it for myself. I think about the client and myself. I don't want a lousy collection of images. I want to create a strong collection of images. It doesn't matter that this isn't my artwork. I still care about it. And so for me, I don't want a time limit for myself. I know they don't want one. It's an outdated model to me. There's going to be a lot of people online and articles written about how I'm wrong. That's okay. You got to do what works for you. I mean, why am I doing this? I'm doing this because I don't like rules. I don't want to work for someone else. I can do this however I want. You can run your business however you want. Just make sure you're running it so that you're sustainable, of course. Yeah, Maple says, no, you can't stop, for us at least. Aman. And one more question. You can ask a million questions. How do you decide if you'll need an assistant for a shooting session? I never need one, to be honest. It's always nice, but the only time I've ever brought assistants is when I shot more of this kind of work. I used to take on interns, and I used it to train them. And so they would come, and I would teach them how I light portrait sessions and all that. Having reflectors, having an assistant is beneficial, but if you know lighting, you don't necessarily need one. It's not always like, sometimes less is more. You don't need complicated lighting situations to get meaningful portraits. And so, for example, last week we had a live stream where I showed you professional portraits being shot. I needed one just to help me for a variety of reasons, making adjustments to the lights really fast so I didn't have to do it myself, carrying gear, all that. But for a family session, you don't really need anyone. You don't need is the operative word. Let's take a look. Linda says, it's great to have your client Maple on the live stream. It's great to hear her feedback. Yeah, I'm really excited to have her. Macy says hi. Yes, Linda, we love Mick. He's just the best. So knowledgeable, creative. He's part of our family now. That's who he is, and shows his passion for photography. I love you guys. Okay. Well, I'm not reading the other ones because they're just like flattering me. I've had a great experience working with, I love what I do, and so I genuinely enjoy it, and I love kids, and so I enjoy shooting them. Like, also, like, so I get the feedback a lot is that, oh, you're so patient. And I'm like, yeah, they're not my kids. This is like fun and novel. You know, I get to go home after this. So I don't take anything personal. Also, it's my philosophy of not taking things personal. And if a kid isn't cooperative, I don't dwell on it. I do the best I can with the situation I'm given. And that's rooted in a Stoic philosophy. If you guys are curious about Stoicism, I would look into it. But essentially, it's going beyond acceptance of what you can't control. It's looking at your variables and then saying, how can I use them to my advantage? So you always see the best in everything. And I take that philosophy to my portrait sessions. Let's keep going on the images. There are a few more. Here, maybe I could have edited one of those out. If you're just joining, here's a link to my work. You're welcome to check that out. I also made a live streaming playlist. If you miss any of the live streams, you can check them out. They're all going to be in there. And here I am. I think I'm out of focus, Maple. Oh no, I'm in focus. Kinda. there I am with my Canon 1V and my little POV camera. You guys can see my little film rig. So we made it to Union Station at this point, by the way. But unfortunately, we didn't really have many opportunities. You're not allowed to shoot in Union Station, too. And I think they're a little more strict than a lot of places. Okay, now we're going to get into some of the film photography I shot. This was with the Canon 1V, this guy right here, a beast flagship camera. I love shooting with it. The great thing about it is I can take any of my professional lenses and I can add it to it. So again, you don't need to shoot film. You don't need to do it because it's trendy. I do it because I like it. I love the quality of the work. It forces me to be creative. It makes every shot more meaningful because I don't have infinite amounts of shots I can take with it. I pretty much am limited to 24 or 36 frames, so I make sure they count. I found my hit rate with this camera is like 98%, 99%. I'm not kidding. Part of it is because the autofocus is so good, and the other part is that it forces me to be present and make sure everything's counting. So this, I believe, is shot with an 85mm portrait lens, and I believe it was Tri-X. Tri-X is a really nice film with a lot of latitude. You can, I know this might go over some people's heads, but you can push it, you can pull it. It develops pretty well in a lot of different developers. I like to develop it in either diaphine, or I like to develop it in Rodinal, which is when I want a finer grain. Flaherty, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Because of Flaherty and his contributions, I thought I was actually making money on these live streams because it said I made like $7 on the first one, and I thought it was because of ads. I'm like, whoa, I make money on these, and then I realized it was only because he contributed. I appreciate it very, very much. It really, it's not the dollar amount. It's, you know, it just makes me feel like, it makes me feel appreciated. I appreciate that. Okay, next shot. So one thing I've also been doing lately is, you guys may have noticed there weren't black and white photos. And usually with portrait sessions, when I'm being more creative, not a professional like corporate event, I will use, I lost my train of thought by looking at comments. I will use, what was I saying? I won't convert to black and white for a corporate event because I don't think they want that really. And if they do, I think they can do it on their own if they want to put a black and white photo on Instagram, whatever. And I don't want them to say, hey, can you deconvert it? That is a possible thing. With the portrait session, you have more freedom to be creative, I think. And one way is by converting to black and white. I stopped doing that because I started shooting black and white film on the job as well. And I really, really, really love like the look of black and white film. Maybe more than even color film. So here we have a few black and white shots. Pretty sharp too. Not the finest grain film, but still looks pretty sharp. We're shooting, basically, it's great to be, you don't need a professional film camera. That's the thing. You can get these old film cameras that don't have autofocus that can still create really high quality images because a lot of vintage glass is really quite good. In fact, I would choose vintage glass, your average vintage glass, over your average like kit lens any day. Maple, you don't have to do that. Thank you so much, but you don't have to do that. Oh my god. Okay. I don't know how to not blush, I feel like. Okay. Looking at another one. Yeah. I just love the quality of these black and white photographs. I think I only raised my rate once with Maple because after like so many years, only to cover like the cost of the film because I was spending money on film. I can find a technical issue with this image, and that is that I can't check metadata because it is a film photo, but if you look at this image, I focused on Macy, and then on the next one I focused on Miles. And really, in this type of a shot, I should have had them both in focus, but I think even as I shot it, I knew that my f-stop might not have enough focus, enough of a deep enough focus in order to get them both, and so I shot one of each. But one thing I will note, and I like to say the hotkeys I use in Lightroom because I'm used to teaching my students. So I hit R for crop, then it's loading, I don't know why. Okay, R for crop, X will flip it. So if you were in horizontal mode, you're now in vertical. And so I could actually create another image there. Of course, if you're cropping, and I also have an image here. Of course, if you are cropping, you are losing resolution, and I'm shooting with a pretty high-speed film that's not super fine-grained, and so it looks more film-like. But, you know, you're not shooting film because of its superior quality. That said, in a minute, we're going to take a look at some medium format portraits, which I think actually rival my 5D Mark III. Yeah, I loved how these came out. So here I'm using my Pentax 6.7 Mark II. I missed my focus in this shot a touch, and so it looks not quite sharp. But here I'm shooting with a much harsher light. But I find that with black and white film, I get away with it, where I wouldn't get away with it so much with color. So here we have a Pentax 6.7 medium format shot. Welcome back, Casa. We have a medium format Pentax 6.7 shot. If you guys want to take a look at that, yeah, let me grab that. Here is my Pentax 6.7. I really find like a lot of the cliches about photography to be annoying, like beast of a camera. People say that all the time. It's annoying. Even I said it recently. But this camera is a beast of a camera. I mean, it is huge. Just to compare it to my Canon 1V, with the grip on, it's still much bigger and much heavier. It's all metal. It's clunky. I love it though. The problem is, like, if you really enjoy shooting film, is then loading up all these film cameras can be a little bit difficult. You're lugging around a lot of gear. And I do like working light, but with portraits I make an exception. It's a little bit easier to lug gear, to make a lot of lens changes and that kind of thing. At an event though, I usually have to make a decision and pick like a film camera if I'm going to bring one. Somehow missed my focus here too, I think. But sometimes it's the scan, and I need to rescan it. I love that shot of Miles. Here they are together, and you guys can see it has this just beautiful tonal range that give it a lot of depth that I don't think you even have with the 5D Mark III files. And let's see if we can zoom in a little bit. All right, let's catch up on questions or comments. Aman, I have borrowed 1D here. I have to return it after the corona restrictions, after it eases. It's amazing, but I bought a 300V, which I owned years ago for $20 to have a substitute. Wasn't the 300V, I don't remember which one that is. I remember the original Rebel in Europe was named like a 300 something, but I don't remember. Mon says nice image. I don't know which image I was on when you said that, but thank you. And Casa says he's back. All right. A few more. Oh, actually, that may have been the last image. So I'll quickly scroll through them in case you're just joining me. Today, we are looking at these portraits of Miles and Macy, who I've been photographing for, let's see, if they're going to be 8, that would be like 6 years. Right? I think we're going to do, then If you're still there, Maple, let me know. I don't remember how many. I guess it would be 6 years. We tried many different locations. We try to change it up every year. We've done Venice Beach. We've done Travel Town, which is in Griffith Park, where it has a bunch of trains. We've done Barnstall, where I teach. And then also sometimes we do 2 locations, or pretty often, I guess. We've done Barnstall and then the observatory, right? Yeah, that's the first year I shot them with film. I shot some color too, I think. So Casa says he got a rolling case for his Kiev. I got so exhausted carrying it around. Which one do you have? In Kiev, they made like different styles of film cameras, right? I think they had like a TLR, but they also had like a Rolly knockoff, right? Not a Rolly knockoff, a Hasselblad knockoff, basically, if I'm remembering right. 5 years, yep. You did skip a year. I'm not mad, it's okay. Alright, so I'm going to scroll until I hit the bottom, and then I will wrap it up. If you guys have any questions, let me know as soon as possible. I will get to them. I really appreciate having you guys here today. Looks like we have 12 concurrent viewers. That's not bad. I would love to hit a new record. I think the most I ever had was 18. So if you guys could get the word out, I would really appreciate it. Especially if you know any working professionals or people starting out or people wanting to learn. It's hard for them to find content like this. You know, if you go to YouTube and you put photography, you're going to get a bunch of gear review videos. And clearly I'm trying to offer something different. But unfortunately, it's not because people are awful and only care about gear. The YouTube algorithm isn't really conducive to this kind of content. It's not really searchable content. It's easy to search for a camera. We've all done it probably, but it's hard to search for like in-depth tutorials and experience videos where I'm talking about my experience shooting. I really like these shots here. I hope I see you guys in June. I really do. Oh, this whole thing has been awful. Let me know, Maple, if you have any ideas on where you'd like to shoot next. You know what we should do? And actually, this isn't... I'm going to... Well, let's do a location, but on me, I want to photograph them in the studio. I would love to do that, and that's all on me. And I will completely, like, it's free. I just want to try some different stuff. I'll shoot some film in the studio. That would be really fun for me. I still remember the year. I think it was the second time I photographed you guys. And Miles was really into space and started naming all the planets in order. And then I'm like, what's Macy into? And I think you said like unicorns and princesses. Okay, we have a few questions. I don't know why some medium format cameras are so expensive. I know why. Mamiya 7 is really nice, but never understood why it's expensive, $2K. And I don't know what STH is. Shut the hell. Okay, there's a few reasons why medium format cameras or film cameras are expensive. One, obviously, is that they're getting more and more popular. A lot more popular. The other is you have this weird thing, the whole influencer culture. And so if a big YouTube channel does a video on a specific camera, even if it was like really niche or unheard of, now everyone knows about it. It's kind of like there's like a premium tax. They're not bad cameras usually that are really highly valued, but what you have is you also have a hype. Like the whole Contax camera that Kylie or whatever Jenner, I'm not sure which one, was starting to like, oh, I shoot with this camera, and now that camera's worth like way too much. I got this Pentax camera with 3 lenses for like $450, and prices were already going up years ago. I really think I could sell my whole kit for like $1,200 now. And then there's like really obscure cameras that are really highly valued now because a YouTuber does a video on it. Like if you have a big enough following, it wouldn't be hard just to like, it's pretty unethical, but you could easily, if you have a large channel, hype up a camera, buy a bunch of them first, hype it up, sell them, you know? I've seen it. I know this because I used to buy and sell cameras as like this hobby of mine. What happened is I started buying them online. I got a really good, this is a really pretty photo. I got a really nice knack for knowing if the camera would work or not and being able to identify what the problem was just by the description. I also started experimenting with repairing them myself, which I just don't have the time for anymore. And so what I was doing is I would buy a camera for maybe like $40 and it would be worth like $200. Sometimes it didn't work, you know, but thank God, like everything I bought worked that was of value. For example, I bought a Leica camera online and they didn't know if it would work. I bought an M3 for like $1,100 and I just had faith it would work. And I figured, you know what, it is a Leica. It's probably worth more. It was pretty mint. If I had to spend like $400 to get it fixed, I would still be okay. So I didn't mean to like fall into the trap of buying and selling. That wasn't the goal, but I realized what I just wanted to do is shoot with a bunch of different film cameras, and in order to keep doing that, I'd have to sell them, right? And I realized I was making a profit. And so I watched the camera market really change. I watched like the value of a lot of cameras go way up. Even like year to year. Like one year it was incredibly sharp. All right. The Mamiya 7 is expensive because I believe it's still made. And so old Mamiya 7s are being valued based off of the new ones, which are like $2,500 or something like that, right? So if a camera's not made anymore, it won't be as expensive. Also, a lot of cameras have hype, but there's a lot of really good ones that don't. And you can always like look into that if you're interested in shooting film. So again, these are more experimental. I'm shooting in different types of light than I would normally want to, or it wouldn't be my go-to, but we're just seeing if we can make it work. Like here we had this weird window of light of really warm sunset light. And here we're actually approaching almost that like blue hour where the warm tones turn almost magenta before turning blue before, you know, we're in nighttime. All right, guys, last call if you have any questions, and then I'm going to wrap it up. Or comments or anything. Also, I love your feedback. I'd love to hear about what you'd like to see me share next. As I've said before, I'm going to talk philosophy. I'm going to talk like gear. I'm not like in the way most people do. I'm going to show a lot of my work. I have a lot of ideas for what we can cover in the live stream. Also, I want to start bringing in like guests and do more of like a podcast style. Yeah, they are really cute. I will show you guys the first session at some point. I'll find them. I don't know where all of them are. I guess I'd have to just go back 6 years. We do it around the same time every year, if I'm remembering right. So I guess I just have to check like June of like 2014 or something. Okay. have a few comments. I think we never had so much fun being photographed when I was a kid. Back when I was a kid, it was pretty much if you wanted photos taken, you went to a studio, and they were like, they weren't that bad, but they were like studio photos and very traditional. We didn't have like fun on location photo shoots. That's a newer thing, really. Thanks for watching, everyone. So I'll wrap it up. I'll be live streaming every day. I'm going to continue this at least during, the pandemic, but I will be streaming every day at 10:15 a.m. I'm also going to do some impromptu streams, so make sure you've subscribed to the channel so that you'll be alerted to those. Make sure you click the bell icon. If you like the video, I really appreciate that you like it. It will help me out. It will help get the word out. If you know any photographers that are learning and you want to, let them know about the channel, I'd really appreciate that. As always, you can check out my work going to mickmilman.com, and you can see what I'm all about. Sorry, distracted by the comments. I really want to hear what you guys think, what you want to see going forward. So I will put out a poll on my channel on my community tab, but also feel free to get in touch. I'm going to put my email. I keep an open channel. Anyone can email me. I realize at some point I can't be so generous with my time, but I am for now. If you guys want, if you'd like a critique, I'm going to open it up first to my Patreon subscribers, but if you'd like to share your work as to be critiqued, please let me know. Shoot me an email, and we can talk about it. I don't know where you're from again. I think you're in England, right? Casa de Cristo? I think you're in England. But yeah, for me, it's morning. I've really enjoyed doing these in the morning because it sets my day up to be productive. Like, I feel like I achieved something. Even if it's just like checking a box and knowing I did something with my day, even if like I'm not making money or anything like that, it's okay. But I'm going to keep doing it. All right, that will be it for today. Thank you guys. I appreciate all of you. I will see you tomorrow at 10:15.